Judy, could you tell us more about, the inner landscape, the outer landscape, altering the landscape, lots of landscapes.
Lots of landscape. Well, in NLP, we have this idea, it's a presupposition, and it's a very important one called the map is not the territory. But I don't think in terms of maps because maps are flat. And living systems are living systems and not so flat. They have a lot of flexibility and generativity in them naturally. So when I think about this inner space, I think about this inner space as a landscape. And there's parts of the landscape that I know really well. There's parts of the landscape that I probably don't know really well. There's, mountains and valleys and, there's places you're moving along the landscape and all of a sudden it's like you fall into the shaft, a mine shaft, and you go, how the hell did I get here and how the hell do I get out, if it's not such a pleasant place. So the landscape relates to, just as we look at a landscape outside, I think about that as sort of a metaphor for the inside. And in that landscape, I have things called beliefs. And beliefs will define the space where I can go, where I can't go, what I can know, what I can't know, what's worth doing, not worth doing, on and on and on. Beliefs are like these posts that sort of hold my landscape together in a certain form. So that's what I mean. I hope that, I hope that helps. That's what I mean by landscapes. So when a person changes or a person grows or a person shifts a belief or softens a belief, their landscape, they get more area in their landscape. I always think of my rabbit, Mr. B. I have no matter where I put that rabbit, the first thing he did was go to every edge of every space to go, how can I increase my space? How can I make more space for myself? And that's how I think of what those beliefs are like. Yeah. Because they're below the neck, you see. I don't get up in the morning and go, I wonder what I'm going to believe today, right? They're below the neck. That's somatic. That's something of the body, something of the heart. Yeah.
So with this landscape, the first kind of 3 videos are you guiding Cassie through discovering her somatic syntax, so that firstly she learns about it, until then you also have a way of altering or changing the landscape. So maybe you could just describe that sort of process. If somebody's with a client, how do they use somatic syntax and the landscape, which is, very much that theme of about the first half of the somatic coaching.
Okay, so if you think about the internal landscape and you think about the idea of occasionally I am in a state, I'm in a space of that landscape. And let's say that space of that landscape, I judge to be something I don't want. Maybe I lack confidence, or maybe I'm, dealing with sadness, whatever it is. When I go to that part of the landscape, the first thing I do is I'm going to explore the landscape, right? I mean, one of the things that NLP is about is bringing awareness or a meta awareness to what's happening in my inner world. So the first thing is, from a somatic point of view, can I start to explore the landscape without words? If I were to say to a person, just express that space to me without words, what would that other conversation be? So it would be an exploration. First of all, just go, what emerges naturally out of that space, that inner landscape, let's say, of a particular state of being or a particular attitude of being? How does it get expressed in the other conversation other than words? And is it just like you have the surface structure of language, you have also a surface structure called the analog. And that would include voice tone, right? But I'm talking more specifically about the physiology in general in the movement and what emerges naturally. Over time, all species find a particular groove. So the more time I spend in a certain area of the landscape, that the words and the physiology will support that. And I don't know if this is true or not, but I heard that newborn babies can do 3,000 discrete movements with their body. And by the time we're like a teenager, we do about 300. And by the time we're 40, we do about 30. So what is that, and if there's a real relationship between expansiveness and flexibility here and here, they're not independent, right? We know that when I go, and I can't breathe because my physiology just stopped, right? I can't think either in that moment. So,
right. So
I
can I just ask you,
yeah, sorry, go ahead,
maybe you could just explain what somatic syntax is, because
yeah.
I don't think I even know, but I say I mean, I don't know what, but maybe I
So,
haven't. No, I know. But I mean, for people who don't know what it is and how useful it is, also Judy did invent it, so it'd be. I mean, everyone has it, but you invented well, you kind of you did. You invented it.
Maybe I named it. Maybe we
All right,
named
you
it.
named it. You named it. You saw it.
I didn't invent movement.
Well, close.
Anyway, you know what I mean. Well, just like there's syntax in language, just like I can say, the cat chased the rat. But if I go, the rat chased the cat, something weird happens, you go, that's not right. Or I can change the syntax and have a different meaning. There's also a syntax to movement because of those grooves, because we spend a lot of time in a certain place. We also have a kind of groove in the movement, and that is another syntax. That syntax will match a particular state of being quite often. So, and it's a surface structure, just like language is a surface structure and has a syntax. This is also a surface structure and has a syntax.
And so, how when I saw you guiding Kathy into altering the landscape, there was a case of a sort of that classic problem state, desired state, and how do you use somatic syntax to actually bring about change? Because that's one of the later on, once Kathy's discovered and worked out her somatic syntax, she's now ready to start getting some doing some change work with you.
Right. Well, I mean, here's the thing. First of all, is exploring the landscape, going, what's here? The second part is, can I alter? What's the word? Can I manage it? What makes more of this in me and what makes less? And when I change the quality of movement, for example, if it's a positive state, let's say, congruence or alignment as a leader. Let's say you're a leader and you're very aligned as a leader, and you go, what's the natural movement that comes out when the person describes that? So first there's exploring it. The second part, I think, is noticing how you can make more of it. I mean, in NLP, we always say first comes awareness, then we go, can I calibrate it? Can I go, what can I discover in terms of making more or less of this resource in myself? What happens when I speed the movement up, slow the movement down, put myself off balance, put myself on balance? All kinds of things start to emerge out of that space. When it comes to problem solving, I'm doing the opposite. If I have a problem, I want to go, what's the natural somatic syntax that comes out of that problem, right? Where does it get stuck? This would be Moshe Feldenkrais going, where does my body stop in that movement? And some of those are archetypic. If I think of Virginia Satir, the blamer, no, there's Halley's Comet, look at kind of thing. So then I'm looking to how do I destabilize that through my movements, the problem state, so that I can start to create enough flexibility in the system so that I can come back home. So I can complete the movement in a way is how I think about it. So that's how I would think about working with a problem state as opposed to a not problem state, is first of all bringing awareness. Can I make more of it? Can I make less of it? If I can make more of a problem, I can make less of a problem. If I can make more of a positive state, I can also make less of it or shift it. I mean, but it means that I have integrity. I can bring the integrity to my own system and have multiple pathways to do that.
Great. So what I thought might be an idea, so that there's a little bit more interactivity, maybe I'll ask you one last question and then maybe take some from the audience, because the last part of the somatic coaching, not the advanced one, we'll do that later, is the dancing score, which you, very much is, I associate with you, a kind of amazing change process, if I can just throw in whatever. I actually remember there was this unusual time when I was in NLPU 2007, and I was supposed to work with a practitioner. And this man was literally an engineer who worked at Audi, a German man. And he said, I want to do the dancing score with you. And he had such precision. And at the end of it, I felt transformed. And he was the practitioner. And I thought, wow, this is good. So there was a kind of natural skepticism that I had. I was a bit in my head and so on. But when I started seeing, and certainly over the past 20 years or so, I've seen so much, how so often people who are in their head, use their mind to block change, but the body doesn't lie. So there's something powerful about the somatic, the dancing score. I mean, more than powerful. I mean, I think, you could make a living with the dancing score. There we are. You could make a living with the dancing score. And Judy will now tell you how.
Let me tell you how to do that. Let me say something about the score in case people don't know, what the score is, and a little bit about archetypic movement that relates to that. So the score as a model, if you think of a timeline in front of you, you're just sitting here and you got time in front of you, and you have something that's bugging you called a symptom. Maybe you're bugged about something right now. Maybe you're tired because of all this COVID crap. Maybe, who knows? But you go, yeah, there's something going on, and that's kind of the symptom in the moment. Something causes that to happen. Could be something that happened yesterday or 20 years ago. It doesn't matter. But you go, something holds that in place that I've learned from somewhere, that it's holding it in place in my present. So I have a cause and I have a symptom. Then there's something I want instead. That's an outcome. That's good old NLP, present state, desired state. Here you are now. What do you want instead? Where do you want to go? So then I have a cause and I have a symptom and I have an outcome, or something I want instead of this problem or this symptom. And if I get to that outcome, let's say I want more confidence. Let's say, okay, now if I have more confidence, what are the longer term effects that will have in my life, right? So when I look at that timeline and go, I have a cause back there somewhere. I have a symptom that I'm experiencing in the present. I have something that I want, that's slightly in the future. And then I have effects of that, which would be longer term future. And then I have the space in between. What is going to happen in that space in between is a resource. What resource does Judy need in order to move from one side of this landscape, we could call it, over here is a landscape of a cause and a symptom. And over here, I'm trying to get to another part of the landscape called outcome and effect. And I need something to emerge. I need some resource or something, or resource structure, to move from one side of the landscape to another. So first of all, the score as a model was a conceptual model. It was designed as an information gathering tool and a way for me as a coach to organize information. So I go, oh yeah, that's part of the cause. Oh yeah, that's where the person wants to go. So I could just kind of capture things that were coming from another person and have a way to organize that. But to embody something means to move it from rumor or concept to the body. That's what embodiment means. So I go, what happens if we embody this concept? What happens if I take the words away and I dance this? Which means that there's two archetypic movements that happen here. One is in dance, to take a step back means to reflect. So even as a professional dancer, to take that step back archetypically means it's a moment of reflection. To take a step forward, to commit to the timeline, to step into the problem, for example, and really connect to it, that's to take action. And those are archetypic in movement. To take a step back is to reflect, to take a step forward is to act. So when the person connects physiologically into the deep structure and just allows the deep structure to show the movement that naturally comes out of that space, whether it's closed or something because it's a cause, whether it's open because this is an outcome or effect, that I'm going to now bring these movements together into a dance. There's one trick here, though, good trick, which is I'm a body in time and space. That's what I always have to remember. I'm a body living in time and space. So I have the time here outlined, called the timeline, and then I begin to create the spaces. And then I slow way down. I get very, very slow and bring my awareness very inside and notice how my body wants to connect the space, not how I think I should connect it. And many times people will kind of go through the dance the first time and I'll say, what did you discover? And they'll go, something happened, but I can't say it. I don't have a word to describe it. I go, good, but something happened. Can you describe what happened? Maybe they can, maybe they can't, but there's an awareness, a deeper knowing. And that's the somatic world. It's a deeper knowing. Dance it again, do the movements again. A little bit more emerges, especially if I slow down. I've created the space. I mean, this is the thing about change for me is if I have a problem and this is the problem, how my body would say it, how do I create some space around that so my body can move? Just like Mr. B looking for that edge. Where's that edge? Where can I get some more space here, right?
Hero's journey.
Oh, yeah. No,
Tracking transitions, identity matrix.
Okay, so let's talk about those a little bit. So again, like the dancing score, these are about taking sort of ideas or concepts and going, what happens if I embody this, really embody it, not just think about it from the neck up, but go, I am the hero on the journey, right? As opposed to, well, I have to say, Joseph Campbell was one of my absolute heroes because my degrees are in religious studies and comparative religion. And so he was a hero for me for many, many years, right? And so that's one tiny aspect. The hero's journey is one tiny aspect of a just incredibly rich world that this man represented for me. But what he was saying is, look, just like Jung, there are these sort of archetypes that cross all boundaries. And some of those are archetypes and some of those are archetypic processes. And one of those archetypic processes is the hero's journey. Another archetypic process is the idea of Carol Pearson and this sort of process of going through the different archetypes in a natural sort of sequencing of events. And that the hero is the archetype, right? In the hero's journey, that's the hero. And then Steve Gilligan says, well, let's add in some strength. So we get the archetype of the warrior there. So we call in that. Who's that guy for you? Like maybe it's a samurai or something, right? Who represents the strength? And you call that in that archetype, and it strengthens something, and it changes also your somatic syntax, right? It will start to show itself externally. I can balance that with a sense of openness and compassion and love with the archetype of the lover. If I bring that in, what happens? It changes, it adds a quality into my inner world, which will then be expressed in the outer world somehow. And then, of course, lightness and humor, as Robbie is always my motto for lightness and humor and playfulness, right? So that's a balance. So again, we're using the archetypes, but the archetypes, when they move through us as human beings, just like emotions, in fact, I think of emotions as archetypic. When it runs through me as a human being, it awakens something in me. Even though I may not like it, but it's about awakening something in me. So when I first remember thinking about Virginia Satir's postures, as archetypic. I go, I see those all over the world, maybe not all of them, but there's something archetypic about those. And then you go to the real archetypes and you look at, you go around the world and you look at, the gods and the goddesses from around the world, and you see these archetypes frozen in time in these postures. But if you put yourself into those postures, it's like, whoa, they awaken something in you. You feel the power of them. So all of that was really, really exciting for me. So when it came to the hero's journey, or the dancing with the dragon, or dancing with whatever represents the dragon, or something like the dragon. Because if I go to China, dragons are really good, so we don't call them dragons there. We call them something else, maybe little demons or something. That again, I've used my body as the lead instrument in understanding and taking the journey. So they all relate to archetypes. When I get to something, they're all hero's journeys. They're all descriptions of the hero's journey, just different descriptions. When I get to the identity matrix in NLP, which is, about aligning myself at the level of identity, again, it's quite archetypic, and it's the hero's journey, the NLP, university hero's journey, I would say, because the hero's journey is about always holding the question, who am I becoming? Or who is the world asking me to become? Because I is a process, not a nominalization, right? I punctuate along the line myself in terms of identity in roles. First of all, in role identities, Judy the trainer, or, Judy the mom, or grandma, or friend, or colleague, or collaborator, or those are all ways I know myself in relationship to the world. Underneath that is the essence, or the deeper identity, that uniqueness that we all are, that there's only one of a kind of you or me. And that's the hero's journey. So, but I can take a hero's journey out in a role, as a leader in a company. Who am I becoming? What's the essence of me as a leader in that role? What's the potential? What's my potential really? How do I stop myself? What's my limitation? What's my boundary? Who am I not? Don't want to be, what's my weakness?
And that sort of feeds into shadow.